This webinar will last just 30 minutes and we will do our very best to stick to the timeline outlined here. Bluelock will start out with a discussion on public cloud, followed by VMware, who will talk about some of their tools enabling the public cloud. We'll then move into a demonstration of those tools and close with a session of question and answer. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. We have Ankur Agarwal, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Cloud Services at VMware. We also have Bluelock's Pat O'Day, who's our CTO. I will be your moderator for the session, and my name's Alicia Gaba. I'd now like to pass off the controls to Pat. Please go ahead and dive into today's event on public cloud computing.
Great, thanks Alicia, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you Ankur for participating with us as a speaker. So in talking about when the public cloud is useful, based on our experience, after hosting a wide variety of companies in the cloud, we believe the best way to explain that what the public cloud is useful for is to start with what it's not. So if you're running an e-commerce site and your traffic increases 1,000-fold for 1 month of the year, for example, the holiday season that we're in right now, short-term bursting might make a lot of sense. If you're trying to crack the encryption on a WikiLeaks file, designing a new molecule, or charting weather patterns for the next 20 years, then being able to rent instead of buy 1,000 computers for a couple days will probably save some money. It's not that these scenarios aren't real, but they're just a bit too Hollywood for most mainstream application needs. As the majority of IT departments try to add the cloud to their portfolio, they're finding it's not all it's cracked up to be. As you can see from the chart, Gartner refers to this phase of new technology as the peak of inflated expectations. So everyone's pretty excited but not sure what's going on, and as they try to use it, finding out there's some gaps. So some of the challenges are lock-in, so you upload an application into one cloud, or you're in a software as a service application and it's hard to move to another one, or move it back in your data center. Credit card as a payment model, lack of backups, downtime, SLA issues. There aren't necessarily a lot of open standards today, inexperienced staff, and consumer grade support really just slow the adoption down. And that's where we enter the trough of disillusionment, which is the big slope you can see on the graphic there. But from our perspective, after helping a lot of companies, we've figured out that there is some good news. As most of our customers have discovered, there's a moment of enlightenment that happens as the value of the public cloud becomes more clear. So what we've seen is that it's most useful in 3 key scenarios. If there's some sort of an incentive to act quickly, or if there's a lot of unknown or uncertainty about what your needs actually are. It's also perfect if you want to get started quickly, but you might need to change your mind later once you understand what your needs actually are. In a traditional approach, whether you're in a business unit or you're actually in the IT department, acting quickly can be a real challenge. There are a lot of detailed decisions that you have to make. They're all important, but in terms of business concepts, they really just slow the process down. With a cloud model, there are a lot fewer decisions to get started. From our perspective, the easiest way to look at the public cloud is just consider it a virtual data center. So when you build your virtual data center, there are a few more steps, but the real key decisions are how big you want it to be. So how much RAM, CPU, and storage do you need? And if it's a dev and test environment, you might run it in a sandbox, but if it's an application of some kind that needs access to the outside world, the other decision you need to make is how you're going to connect it to the network and what kind of bandwidth you need. But at that point, you have your cloud, you can proceed to using it. So in addition to all the technical decisions you need to make in a traditional approach, like which SAN, how much power cooling, if you have to train your staff, there are even more steps that need to be created because it's not just all about technology. Design, requirements gathering, writing an RFP or an RFQ, procurement, shipping, installation, testing. Once all of that done, you've kind of made your investment and you have your environment. The other challenge is that all those decisions were made when you were least certain about what the needs of the application or the workload actually were. So at that moment of least certainty, you're asking to be making some really important decisions, and the odds of being right are pretty low. It seems somewhat backwards, but that's the way we've done it for the last 10 or 15 years. With the cloud, on the other hand, you can start almost immediately, and because the cost is in line with the actual usage, very little resources or expense are wasted and could be used for other things. But not all applications continue to grow on a kind of a standard curve. Some are successful, some eventually reach a plateau, so they're still useful, but they've kind of normalized, and others eventually reach a point where they need to go away. So they've either lived their useful purpose, they provided value, or they didn't work out quite as well as you expected. As soon as you know what that is, you can turn it off and use that for something else. Once an application or a workload has been running for a while and its needs or requirements have become more clear, you may want to change your mind about where it's deployed. So because everything that we've done with VMware is based on open standards, particularly the OVF standards, workloads can be moved back and forth between the public and private cloud. It might be a workload that you need to move out of your data center to free up capacity for more important things that have to run at your location. Or it might be a proof of concept application that you put in the private public cloud initially, but then as you learn more about it and determine it would be more effective to pull it back into your data center, you can do that. One of the other elements of flexibility that the cloud provides, particularly the Bluelock cloud based on VMware, is that because there aren't a lot of decisions to make, once you've made your decision about how big your virtual data center needs to be, you might want to mix and match your resources. So the components all can change around, but you stay within your current spending level. So you can make those decisions for a single virtual machine if you needed to double the RAM or the storage, a virtual application, or you can resize your entire virtual data center. You can change the blend of the components whenever you need to. In this case, we had a customer who came on board. They thought they had a lot of storage need and they didn't think they'd have very much user activity. But as time went on, they realized that the amount of storage they needed was kind of fixed, but the number of users were increasing rapidly, so they continued to add RAM and CPU, but they stayed in the same cost footprint. It's all very easy. It's not just our cloud platform where these things are important. We tried to align our business model to the needs of our customers as well, mainly by offering an enterprise level of support along with self-service. So you can get started quickly, but as your team gains expertise, if it makes sense, they can take the wheel and start running things themselves. And with the usage model being so well aligned with the cost, we've been able to make the billing very straightforward. Best of all, because you have complete control, other than when an application might exceed your expectations in terms of its value to the business, there shouldn't be any surprises.
Thank you, Pat, for a very informative overview of public cloud computing for the enterprise. We'll now hear from Ankur regarding the VMware technologies enabling the cloud today.
Hello everybody, good morning. So thank you everybody. My name is Ankur Agarwal. I work in VMware vCloud product marketing with specific focus on enterprise customers, how the consumption happens, what exactly are the problems that they are looking at, and how they are planning to move towards cloud solutions. When we look around at all the available vendors today, then one of the biggest things we find is that cloud offers a very low cost, very flexible solution for most of the enterprises as well, with a major gotcha, and that is that you are expected to throw away most of the things that you already have. That includes the organization that you have put together, the technology that you are already using in your data center, and the assets that you have built over the last several years, decades in some cases. Obviously, this form of cloud computing could work for some of the enterprises, but for a large number of decent sized companies, throwing away existing investments is just not an option. And it definitely is not cost effective either. At VMware, we decided to deliver an evolutionary path to cloud computing, which basically provides cost effectiveness of cloud computing while keeping your existing assets and reusing them as far as possible. So that brings up a question, really, what is cloud computing? And one of the biggest things here is that it's not a final destination, which is how it is portrayed several times. Cloud computing is a new approach towards computing that gives you several benefits, and that's what we are going to talk about. But it is a journey. You have to take steps. Every enterprise starts at some level, then finds some success with cloud solutions, increases their investment in cloud solutions, then goes forward, and this process continues till they can reach a point where their service, where their IT can behave like an organization that is able to deliver flexible solutions to internal constituents. So with that, let me talk about 6 core characteristics of cloud computing that VMware solution delivers. And we will talk about the VMware solution in just the next slide. But these are the 6 key ways in which we differentiate ourselves across the industry. First one, the first major bucket is about efficiency through utilization and automation. And what it really means is everything that you have today, you should be able to reuse that. And only then you can achieve cost effectiveness and efficiency that cloud promises. So our infrastructure, in particular the product that we recently introduced in summer of 2010, vCloud Director, gives you greater pooling capabilities. That means your existing machine-based model can be turned into a very highly elastic shared resource pool model. And that can be shared across several applications, across several users, across business units, across organizations. Everybody gets the pool that they need at the time that they need. Then VMware solution, once again based on vSphere and vCloud Director, provides you almost a zero-touch infrastructure, and that means that there is a policy-driven management, there are routine tasks are automated, and the operational expense is reduced tremendously because there is no overhead of somebody going in and having to manage every single day, every single task. Our solution delivers greater agility, but that agility comes with greater control as well, which is once again a very differentiated offering from any other cloud vendor, where you literally have to trust the cloud vendor or trust somebody on the vendor side to do everything for you. With the VMware solution, if you go with the public or the private cloud, you first of all get the flexibility to grant self-service capabilities to end users. So they can come in, they can procure what they need, and they can use those resources that they actually asked for. And then second, it gives you greater control because it is built on an infrastructure which allows different levels of user access. So there can be an administrator and he can determine what a particular user can or cannot do, what type of org should be built and grant access to and control to. Also, the infrastructure is built on on a high availability model with the ability to optimize resource allocations to ensure service levels. There are built-in DR capabilities that ensure business continuity. And then finally, there is a security model, in fact, a multi-level security model that once again is a must for any enterprise that wants to invest in cloud computing. And the last one is freedom of choice, and how the best way to look at this is flexibility. With most of the vendors, if you consume a cloud service from a third party, you are pretty much locked into that vendor and you can never move out. With VMware, we have designed open and interoperable infrastructure so that you can use this open APIs to determine which cloud computing vendor you want to go to and where your workloads should be run. And then finally, we allow you to use your existing assets, which basically means that anything that is virtualized today, you can run them with very little work or almost no work on the cloud that is provided by VMware infrastructure. Okay, 3 core capabilities and 6 attributes. You pretty much have a way to start using cloud computing solution today and then continue to expand your usage as you see success while leveraging everything that you have built so far. And the key thing here is that you will see two pillars, one on the private cloud and one on the public cloud side. The idea here is that everything that you do internally when you build your private cloud, and those clouds could be built just on the pure virtualization infrastructure, or you may actually deploy specific cloud-based solution like vCloud Director internally and build a small private cloud or a large private cloud. And then what VMware does is works with partners such as Bluelock to build the similar thing on the public cloud side, which basically means that since your internal and external infrastructures are exactly the same, or they mimic each other very closely, everything that you build and run on your private cloud can be run on public cloud. And then anything that you are running on public cloud can at some point of time, whenever you are comfortable with it, be brought back into private cloud. Or you can continue to run it in public cloud or send it back to public cloud. And really this flexibility, this ability to work both with private and public clouds in a hybrid mode is what cloud computing is all about. And this is where at the end of the day we see the enterprise cloud consumption model to head. Bluelock is a very close partner of VMware. We have recently worked with them on several strategic areas. In 2009, they were the National Hosting Partner of the Year. Bluelock has already deployed a lot of VMware technology, what we saw in the previous slide, and we are going to get a demo of that. And then we are working with VMware, with Bluelock, to deliver an enterprise level hybrid cloud that we announced back in VMworld timeframe in summer of 2010. And soon we will be announcing the GA or the availability of such a cloud.
So right now we're logging into virtual data center. This is the view I have as a end user customer. And you can see that you don't just have to have one virtual data center, you can have more than one. And really at the end of the day, what a virtual data center is a pool of computing resources. So in the case of virtual data center 2, I've got a fairly small one. It's got 10 gigahertz of CPU, 20 gigs of RAM, and 250 gigs of storage. Once you go inside of your virtual data center, you can see that I have about 6 virtual applications that are running inside my data center. The majority of them are stopped, and my Exchange environment is up and running. And each virtual application has a number of virtual machines, processing, memory, and storage. So as we explained before, the ability to mix and match and recast these on the fly is a pretty powerful component to the solution. If I go into my QA environment, because I know that my database server, I want to do some load testing, so I want to go ahead and increase the amount of resources that it has, I can go into the database server, the settings, go over to the hardware tab, take it up to, go ahead and give it 8 processors, and we'll double the memory. And I'm also going to try and see if it makes any difference if I move my transaction logs onto another disk. So I'll add another disk drive. I'm going to give that 128 gigs of storage. Click OK. Yep, looks like my virtual data center is too small, so I'll need to get that upgraded. But basically, once I make those changes, as soon as I power the database server back on, it'll have all those new resources. I can run my testing, power it off, come back in and shrink it back down to normal size, all within the self-service portal. One of the other powerful capabilities within the virtual data center is the concept of catalogs. So as your service provider, Bluelock provides a list of VMs and vApps that you can deploy from out of our catalog. So if we just need to spin up 10, 20, or 50 Windows 2008 servers very quickly, run some testing, and then power them off, probably doesn't make sense to configure a custom template. You just need to use ours, get your software loaded, do your test, and then delete them. But if you wanted to take a template that you had in your own VMware environment today, for example, I've uploaded the Bluelock standard Windows 2008 server with IIS configured, Oracle already configured, SharePoint, and SQL Server. Those are my standards for my company, so that every virtual machine or vApp I deploy already has my backup agent, my antivirus agent, and my monitoring agent already built in. One of the more powerful things that you can do is upload workloads. So when we showed the graphic about being able to move workloads between public and private cloud, this is the capability we were referring to. So if I had a workload locally in my own VMware environment, or in this case on my desktop, I've already made a copy of a running Oracle database server that I had in my private data center, and I've got it sitting on my desktop here. It could also be on a shared drive on your network. Just browse over to it. I pick the Oracle database. It's already built into the vApp. Call it Windows 2008 R2 64 Oracle 11G. I can pick which data center I want to upload it into, and then it becomes a template. So if that became the standard template for all my Oracle deployments, I could leave it in the catalog. If that was a running application, which it is in this case, I've got all of my data and everything at that point in time in which I made a copy of it. I can then move it from my catalog into a production environment and deploy it as a working VM, and then just remove it from the catalog. It's very easy. The same thing applies in reverse. If you wanted to go into your environment and download something, you could basically take a running workload that you had in your virtual data center, decide that you need to move it, or you move a copy of it back into your existing VMware environment. You just click on the download key. It comes across the same way the upload works, and then you would move it in as an OVF into your existing VMware environment. As we've been running this application for probably 6 months, and as we have gotten more customers into the environment, one of the pieces of feedback we continued to receive was some interest in managing your public cloud environment with Virtual Center. So as a VMware customer, you probably already have staff that are trained and very comfortable with the Virtual Center interface, and they want a single pane of glass. So we worked with VMware on an application called Cloud Connector, and as you can see, if you go into your existing vSphere client after installing the Cloud Connector, you have an icon for your public cloud. You log in, and now within Virtual Center, you're able to manage the exact same virtual data centers that you saw inside the Virtual Data Center interface. So all the vApps that I had, the virtual machines, the ability to stop, start, pause, suspend, etc. are all there, as well as you're able to access your public and your private catalog. So you can do machine deployments in there. So once you get your virtual data center up and running, if it makes more sense to include that as part of your Virtual Center environment and not manage it through the web interface, you add this connector and you're good to go.
So we did have a few questions. The first one is for VMware. So Ankur, how can I get the Cloud Connector?
Thank you, Alicia. vCloud Connector is still in the form of development. We have recently moved into beta stage. If you are interested, then please connect with me through my email and we will provide you the email address.
Thank you, Ankur. Our next question is for Pat. So Pat, how do I get started in the cloud and how quickly can I access the environment?
Yeah, the good news is that it's very easy from a technology standpoint to get your virtual data center up and running. From a Bluelock standpoint, we literally go in, take the amount of resources that you think you need to start with. You don't have to know all the answers. You just need to know where you want to start. We build your virtual data center, and that usually takes about a day. The challenge with anything is sometimes the paperwork. It takes longer than the actual technology to get going. But we've also got some quick start offerings where we can basically work with you on a proof of concept model. We don't have to go through as much legal or contractual, so we can get that down to less than a week as well. But it's a very quick process, And as you've seen in terms of building your cloud, if you're comfortable with the user interface, that you can do as quickly as your mouse can move.
Thanks, Pat. One quick follow-up question. How much does it cost?
That's a great question. We have a pricing schedule that you can, if you go to our website, bluelock.com, and make contact with us there, or there's some contact information on the next slide. We can send you a pricing schedule, but it basically maps to the components that I described in how to build a virtual data center. So there's a price for RAM, CPU, storage, and bandwidth. And it's measured in intervals so that it maps with your usage.
If you'd like to schedule a full demo, an extended version of what you've seen today, you can contact Grant Howell at the number shown here or at his email address. So thank you all for joining us today. Everyone, have a great lunch and a great rest of the day.